Hello. Why is it so hard to say hello to a camera? I want to do a little bit of a different video from my usual videos that are usually like Aphex Twin analysis or interviewing someone or something like that. But in this video, I want to talk about a project of my own called ZOiD Vs the Musicians, ZOiD Vs the Jazz Musicians of Ireland Volume 1 and ZOiD Vs Musicians Volume 2. And it's a project I've been working on since 2006, very long time. So it really goes back to way before that though, because when I was a teenager, when I was 14 or 15, I started getting into jazz and electronic music at the same time. A little bit earlier jazz, and then like when I was 14, I started listening to jazz and really getting into bebop and Charlie Parker and stuff like that, Miles Davis. And then when I was about 15, 16, I got introduced to techno. And those are the two main types of music that I've been into listening, making, studying, listening, buying, listening, studying, making since the 94, 95, since then. I studied jazz for 4 years full-time in after school and college, and I played loads of jazz gigs, played in like loads of bands and projects for years. But at the same time, I didn't feel like it was my main thing. The thing I identify myself with more as being an electronic music maker, an electronic musician, and that. But I try and use fuse those two worlds. Well, not in fusion though. Fusion is like a very specific type of a jazz fusion thing. And I don't know, it's weird. Like Square Pusher, I suppose, has a similar story in terms of he says that these two things, the bass playing and the jazz and the electronic music, were the two things he was trying to fuse together. But in the electronic music world, he was coming more from the drum and bass and the jungle and the crazy beats. Whereas I was not really into that much drum and bass or jungle. I mean, I just heard a little bit of it, but I was growing up in the mainly 130 BPM to 136 BPM techno window. Well, a little faster too sometimes, but I didn't even really listen to much house music. It was techno music, Detroit techno, and also Reflex and the IDM side, or the brain dance stuff, the Aphex Twin stuff, and all the great English electronic music. But so Detroit, Underground Resistance and Reflex, my two favorite labels growing up, loads of those records. And that music, I mean, there's some great examples of that with jazz in it, like high-tech jazz, Galaxy to Galaxy, all that stuff. That's a huge influence on me. And in the Aphex Twin and the Reflex stuff, there's not so much of jazz element in that. It's more just really cool, acid, just weird music that's great. And it's just very well produced. The production quality in Reflex is like super high. So that was my background and getting into those musics, then trying to make electronic music. So getting a bit further forward, after I studied jazz for 4 years, I wasn't really making any electronic music at that time. I was just concentrating hard on learning to play jazz because I thought those skills would be useful for making music. The melodic skills, the rhythmic skills, the harmonic skills. I learned a lot about harmony in that world. And then after that, remembered, but I'm making electronic music. I have to get back into that. I had sold all my equipment at a point. I think it was in like second year of the 4 years that I was studying jazz. I had like a Keye sampler, 12-channel desktop PC with Cubase, a few bits and pieces, drum machines, synths. I sold everything. I didn't keep anything. I was like, nope, I'm just going to play guitar all day long and, transcribe Wes Montgomery and whatever, do that jazz thing. And then after the course finished, or towards the end of it, I was like getting back into buying some more equipment. Can't remember actually what I got. An XO Xbox for sure, and computer again, and a laptop. So I was mainly doing stuff on a laptop, on a computer, and I got back into, I did a music and media technologies in Trinity College Dublin. That a lot of electronic music producers in Dublin, in Ireland, did that course, and like Dennis McNulty from Decal, who had done it before me a few years before, and I knew him, and so there was some kind of influence there with the people, and Maura O'Boyle, who hello Maura, been hanging out with. So after that course, I was fully back into making electronic music then, and I've been like really stretched musically all over the place, you know, from jazz and more listening to Stockhausen and Xenakis and like contemporary music, and also techno, and, you know, still going out to club nights and stuff like that. So I was trying to piece all this together and do something and fuse it all together in my head, and I came up with this idea. Actually, yeah, during those 2 years that I studied in Trinity, actually, it took 3 years, because in the middle of those 2 years, I went to New Zealand for a year. And in New Zealand, I was exposed to loads of other types of music, like free improv. I did that a lot in New Zealand. And I was making electronic music, and I was still practicing guitar a lot. And after coming back home, finishing the course, then at that point, and I also went to Red Bull Music Academy that year, 2005 or 2006, and got married that year. A lot going on back then. And it was then that I had this idea. I'm sure it was probably on a meditation course. I can't remember the exact moment of thinking of the idea itself, but I'm pretty sure it was on a meditation course. And the idea was that I would create an album called ZOiD Vs the Musicians of Ireland, and it would be like a series of tracks, each featuring a different musician, jazz musician. There's loads of good ones around, and I applied for a grant to make that album. I got the grant. I got like €10,000 or something like that. So I had a good budget to pay the musicians something for the recording sessions and get a really nice artwork. The artwork for the album is my favorite thing about this album. It really is. So it's like a digipack CD. Artwork is by Shane Ingersoll, a great artist who's also working currently on the next one. So it opens up like that. It's like a comic book. ZOiD versus Jazz Musicians of Ireland, number 140, July. It says up there, still only 20 cents. And there's all this stuff. Loads of details. It was designed by Brian Solon. So Shane did all his artwork for the cover. Brian Solon did the design. The CD looks very cool. It's got all this stuff. And then inside there's this 8-page booklet. So each track, it has information about the track and a comic strip. Like this track, it says the title and the personnel, and then the length, the BPM, the time signature, the form. It's really cool. I forgot about all these details actually for a long time until someone mentioned it to me. Nadia bought it recently and said, "Oh, that's cool the way you've got the form, time sig, changing time sig. Look, this one has this mad form. Look at the form of that. A, B, C, A by 1, B by 2, C by 3, D by 4. That's mad. Who puts that on? That's a good idea." So it's got 8 comic pages, one for each of the tracks, and it tells this story as well. This story about this being called a ZOiD, and all the info at the back page. Produced by Zoidan Yankelovich. That was my Zoidan Yankelovich was the pseudonym I used. I didn't think ZOiD was a good name, so I thought of Zoidan Yankelovich. And that's the CD package. Since I've opened this one and they're like shrink wrapped. Who wants this one? Competition time. You want this? Just send me €10 and I'll send it to you. I'm only joking. If you want this CD, serious, you can win it by answering a question. It's a joint release. So what are the two labels that release this CD? Put your name in a comment, and we'll have to get some way of getting in touch, because YouTube, there's no messaging. So on Instagram, ZOiD999, you can send me your details on there, if you're on there. And yeah, I'll send you this. I'll send you the CD. I will. Okay, so that's the current, or that's the story of ZOiD versus the Jazz Musicians of Ireland, Volume 1. That came out in 2007, and I went on to do lots of other different stuff, and then a few years, and I also started actually recording tracks for ZOiD versus the Musicians Volume 2. I dropped the jazz from the title because it's not all jazz musicians, so it doesn't make sense to say jazz musicians. And I actually had started like around 2008, very early on. I was recording tracks for the next volume. So there was a Niwel Tsumbu, Zumi Kimura, Matt Halpin. Those early recordings didn't make it, they didn't survive. So for the new album, there is a new track with Niwel Tsumbu, a new track with Matt Halpin, who's a great sax player, and there's Zumi, we tried to set up a date multiple times, didn't work out, so that'll have to wait till Volume 3. But there are tracks with my brother Matthew Jacobson, Bill Blackmore, Steve Welsh, Jenna Harris, Daniel Rorke, Catherine Sikora, Mingus, Shane O'Donovan, Hatchie. It's 12 tracks. And here's a bit of the session just today, the recording session with Bill Blackmore, trumpet and flugelhorn. It's the last track on the album, so once that's finished, it'll all be done. And Colm O'Hara as well.
Cool, thanks, man.
So, what was that mute called?
That's it's a straight mute.
Ah,
yeah,
very nice.
Yeah, good old muting. Yeah.
Thanks, Bill. So, I hope this was interesting, and see you in the next video.